Welcome to our audience on KTN Home who join us at 7 a.m. this morning. You're with us until 9 a.m. It's going to be an interesting conversation that we will be having shortly because it's about sustainable use of grassland and rangelands resources for improved livelihoods. Now, there's going to be a joint International Grassland and Rangeland Congress 2021, and we have three experts in this field joining us in the conversation. One of them is in the studio and two are joining us virtually. The one in the studio is Professor Jesse Njoka, Associate Professor in Range Management at the University of Nairobi. Good morning, Prof.
Good morning, sir.
It's good to have you in the show. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
We normally call that seat the hot seat, but because you're our friend and I mean, we give you that respect, we're not going to make it a hot seat. We just make it a little bit warm just for you, for your comfort.
Thank you.
The others who are joining us online are Dr. David Miano. Dr. David Miano is KALRO's from KALRO's Non-Ruminant Research Center. KALRO, for those who do not know, is the Kenya Agriculture and Livestock Research Organization. The other one is Dr. Ray Smith. He is the president of International Grassland Society and also the president of this Congress, the Joint International Grassland and Rangeland Congress 2021. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Good to have you on the show, and thank you very much for joining us. I want to start just the conversation here with you, Prof.
Yes.
With the definitions. Grasslands and rangelands. What are they? What's the difference?
Well, to lay people, they are the same. But to the people who are in those fields, there is a real difference because rangelands actually constitute grasslands and woodlands and shrublands. But grasslands is where the percentage of the woodland, shrublands, or any other type of species is much lower. So grasslands are fairly open. You can see far. They can be found in the glades of forest where you have an area that is actually grassland only. But normally grasslands are in the open drylands areas. And when there is misuse or overgrazing of the grasslands, they can turn into bushlands. Mm-hmm. And this is where we have savannas, where you can't tell whether you're in grassland or woodland because of that dynamics. Yeah.
And why are they important? Why are we having this? Why are they important, either for their preservation or their use?
Well, you see, grasses constitute a very big part of our diet. For example, where you have good tall grasslands, you can grow wheat. And wheat is one of the major crops. Even maize is a grass. So some areas where you can grow grass, they are good for maize. But in the natural setting, you have many, many types of grasses that are of great value for livestock production and for something else that is becoming very important today, what we are calling carbon storage in the soil, carbon sequestration, because it has a link to the climate change. So it is important that the grasslands give us what we call ecological services, socio-ecosystem services, providing food, providing wildlife sources of food, and covering the soil so that there is no erosion. So it's very important.
If I were to ask,
yes, please.
Right now, today, on this delightful 21st day of October 2021,
yes,
what percentage of our planet is covered with grass, and what percentage is covered with the rangeland that you mentioned, and what percentage is actually covered by forest?
Okay. First of all, let's define rangelands, because sometimes grasslands are subsumed to be part of the rangelands. And that's why you have this joint congress, where you have International Grassland Congress and International Rangeland Congress. They have decided to come together. And this is the first time they have come to Africa as a joint congress. Now, in terms of the question you're asking, how do you tell the difference? I would say that grasslands are mainly where we are producing fodder for livestock. If you look at our thematic area for this Congress, we have 7 sub-themes, which I think my colleagues will elaborate. And one of them is forage and fodder production. That's like grasslands. And it's very important in many countries, even the temperate countries. And rangelands is where everything is wild. You can't convert it for crops, neither can you put it at the forest. So, and that constitutes, some people say, almost 60% of the dry earth. Here in Kenya, we sometimes say it's 90%. So the productive part of Kenya in the way of getting adequate rainfall is only about 20%. But because of the way we are using the land, it's becoming more, you have heard of desert moving. So sometimes you say it's 90% of Kenya. So we cannot ignore 60% of the dry earth, 90% of Kenya, and 70% of the IGAD region, that is the Horn of Africa, that is characterized by these ridgelands. So they are very important in the long run. And if we want to progress as a country, we have to take care of the drylands, ridgelands. Currently now we are in the midst of drought. And everything might stop just to feed the people who cannot cope in those drylands, rangelands, because we have to feed them. It's our obligation. But how can we help them to use that land the way it is to contribute to the national economy and also to give them a dignified way of life? Yeah.
Professor Smith, if I may ask this question to you. This is the first time this Congress has come to the continent of Africa. How many Congresses have you had? And why have you made this decision to come to this continent now at this time?
This is the 24th International Grassland Congress. The first was in 1927, and it's the 11th Rangeland Congress. And the reason we've come to Africa is because Africa is very important in worldwide grasslands and rangelands, not just to livestock, but also to the wildlife. And so people want to see that. They want to experience that. They want to hear about that. So that's why the conference is in Kenya. As it turns out, the conference is virtual, but we plan many virtual tours and other events that people will be able to see the grasslands and rangelands and livestock and wildlife in Kenya.
Okay, so essentially what you are in essence saying is because of the natural and environmental biodiversity of this country and of this continent, it has then become important. Now, okay, we've got that, it's important, but what would be the outcome of such a gathering, apart from beyond information?
So we've got leading scientists from around the world and students that are attending this Congress and presenting the work that they've been doing to study the grasslands, to study the animal production, to study the benefits to the ecosystem, as Professor Jesse talked about. And so all of those people coming together and reporting on it, they're going to learn from each other. But we're also going to have many publications that will come out of this Congress. So we'll be letting the world know more about grasslands and rangelands, and particularly about the importance of those for Africa.
Okay, now my last question to you for now is this. There is an aspect of research that has over time become extremely important, and it's something that people have determined to ensure that they put into practice. How much of the research that you have seen over time has actually fallen into the category of what we call implementation science, meaning research has been done on this, You figure this out, papers have been written, presentations have been made, and the implementation has been this, and this is the outcome of that implementation.
Yeah, very good question. And I was thinking this today. I've got a publication called Progressive Dairy Production, and it's talking to farmers and talking about how to take research and put it into practice. So it's talking about how to make better maize silage and feed that to dairy cattle, and how that's going to give more milk production. It's talking about the nutritional dynamics of the feed that you're giving dairy animals. So in the context of Kenya, the research on some of the new types of grasses that are being grown in Kenya, that's helping the milk production for the smallholder dairies in Kenya. So I don't have a broad list of topics, but I can think of several that fit very closely. So, it may only be half of the research that we do that actually goes to implementation, but that implementation is very important for people out there on the land.
Dr. Miano, just looking at clearly the work that you do and looking at this Congress happening right now, and also the situation in the country for Kenya, whereby some parts of the country obviously are facing drought, perennial drought issues around these areas, and then looking at the importance that rangeland and grasslands have, and also then what Kenya has in terms of its geographical allocations. Why is this important at this time to discuss? And are we then looking at outcomes that can then help in the future to sort out this perennial drought issue that the country continues to face?
Thank you. I think there are a number of things that we need to look at. In your question, you have just alluded to climate change. Climate change is a big issue, and therefore we are having what we call extreme climatic conditions. We have droughts followed with floods and issues like that. And when you look at grasslands and rangelands, one, as was said by Professor Njoka, they are a big carbon sink, therefore mitigating issues of greenhouse gases because they can store a lot of carbon in the system. So that's an area we need to really focus on. Look at how sustainably to use these ecosystems to provide the services that are there. As Professor Njoka elaborated, issues, food security, but I want to add a few other things. These areas are home to a lot of our pollinating agents. These pollinators, if they are not there, bees and other insects, then our crops will actually not produce. And there are areas where this has already become an issue. One of the things we really need to look at is how we sustainably use these areas so that then they provide the services that they provide to us. In terms of helping the people who live in these areas, in Kenya, we're really talking about quarter the population of this country, about 10 million plus, live in these rangelands and grasslands. But we are also looking at the crops and the type of plants that grow there and how we can use that then to improve our agriculture. We are talking about improving the grasses themselves so that then they are more productive for those areas. We are looking at management systems that will then help the people living in those rangelands to utilize the resources more effectively. And just to mention that if we are in Kenya and in the IGAD region, as Professor Njoka says, 70% of our livestock is actually in these areas. So all our meat, a lot of our milk actually comes from these zones. So that's why they're very, very important for us to take care of. Now, one of the major reasons why we wanted to hold this Congress in Kenya and in Africa for that matter is for us to bring focus to the challenges that we are facing or the people living in the grasslands are facing and also bring solutions that then help sort out the challenges that they are facing right now. So in terms of this Congress, we also want to focus on this rangeland so that our policymakers, our investment plans can also look at what then needs to be done in these areas so that then we can improve the lives of the people living there.
Just to follow up to that, Dr. Miano, it would appear as though, what is available is not adequate for the populations. That's what it would appear. Is there a different outlook to this, that the land that is available for both humans and animals to consume is not adequate? Or are we not making proper use, and in terms of challenges that you talk about, onto solutions, are we not making proper use and also not looking at proper solutions onto preservation of these lands? And are those some of the things then that we would be looking at?
Now, several things. Obviously, the population in these areas has been growing, so there's population pressure. But having said that, then that's where research comes in to develop technologies and innovations that then help us utilize these areas more effectively to feed the growing population, not only of humans, but also of our livestock and also our wildlife. So providing solutions through research, through technologies and innovations is one of the things that KALRO and a lot of our research partners are looking at to improve what happens in these areas. Now, the other major area is that as we look at this, then we need to invest in a lot of these areas. And a lot of these areas, what might be a problem is just water. If you provide a bit of water, manage that properly, then we have major solutions that we have for these areas. So yeah, true, population is growing, there's population pressure, but with technology, I'm sure we can feed the population living in these areas.
Dr. Miano, KALRO has done some astounding work over time, amazingly so. But I want you to paint for us a picture of success where some of the schemes that you mentioned and the technological advances that you've applied have been put in place, and what a success story looks like.
Now, let me start with one of what is unique in the whole world. Kenya is known for smallholder dairy systems, where a lot of our small-scale producers produce all the milk that we take in this country. Now, if you look at some of the plants, some of the forages that we are using in those systems, including Napier grass and others that we are developing right now, this has been the contribution of research into these systems, to sustain these systems and to make them more productive. The areas of rangelands and drylands, we have produced in the last 4 or 5 years, about 6 different grass varieties, improved grass varieties that are becoming commercially available, so that the farmers and the livestock keepers living in these areas then can utilize these grasses to improve the productivity of the land, and hence, therefore, also improve the productivity of livestock in those areas.
A bit of a pain here. Mention the specific areas where this has worked, like say it worked in Marsabit, it worked in Isiolo, it worked in Turkana, and it worked in this area. The reason why I ask this is because a lot of the work that KALRO does, I said, I am a great fan of what KALRO has done, because I've seen what they've done, but not all our listeners have. So when you talk about a specific area and what the specific thing that you did, and specifically also how one can get to actually enjoy some of these research benefits, it helps paint a more realistic picture to somebody who wants to understand this grassland, rangeland relationship. Yes. So,
let me give you a number of examples.
Thank you, sir.
And it's good to hear you are a fan of our work.
Oh, yes, I am.
Now, if you currently go into Makueni County, working together with the county government of Makueni, we have developed a fodder system where farmers actually grow grasses that are then harvested, and the county government has been very kind and built a lot of storage facilities, where then these farmers are actually trading in hay to take to high potential areas or high rainfall areas as a product from the dry areas. So, and these farmers are earning quite a bit of money. I've just visited a farmer in the area of Kibwezi, who is actually producing feed from grasses and making quite a bit of money out of it. And I can go on. We have a very big activity right now going on in Narok and Kajiado, where we are introducing some of our improved grasses to the Maasai community so they can also benefit from the products of our research. If you go to the areas of Kajiado right now, you'll find a breed of cattle called the Sahiwo. And when you go to Kajiado and Narok, it's actually called Rangi Apesa, because by using this breed that KALRO has been working on for the last 100 years or so, they have managed to improve the productivity of their herds. They have better quality meat, and they are therefore earning much more money in the market. And that's why they call the Sahiwa breed Rangi Apesa in Narok and Kajiado.
Good examples. Let's take a break on that very good note. It's 7:30. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We are live on SpiceFM, on KTN Home, and also live streaming the show online. Professor Justin Joka, Associate Professor in Range Management from the University of Nairobi, is with us in the studio. And joining us on a video link is Professor David Miano from KALRO's Non-Ruminant Research Center, and also Dr. Ray Smith, President of the International Grassland Society, but also President of the Joint International Grassland and Rangeland Congress. The Congress will be taking place in this country 2021. Sustainable use of grassland and rangeland resources for improved livelihoods. That's a conversation we're having. Let's continue with it after this quick break. With us in the studio is Professor Justin Joka, Associate Professor in Range Management at the University of Nairobi, Dr. David Miano from KALRO, and Dr. Ray Smith, President of the International Grassland and Rangeland Congress 2021.
Professor.
Yes.
When you talk of grass in this country, at least what I hear is also the absence of grass. When you talk about shrubbery, you talk about trees, I also think of, again, an absence of shrubs and an absence of trees, which means a fast encroaching phenomenon of the desert. Now, grassland, rangeland, the discussion around it, the work around it, the research around it, how do you people in this delightful field go about ensuring, one, the desert doesn't continue growing, or how do you ensure that you recover? We have countries that have been able to actually recover land from the sea, surely. We can recover trees from the desert, can we not?
We can.
Tell us how.
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. In actual fact, I don't know why we have to destroy what we have in order to restore it, because restoration of what is lost is more expensive than prevention. And that's why under the international dryland desertification conference, we have UNCCD. It's a convention that has seen the need for restoration. In actual fact, this year, this decade is called the year of ecosystem restoration. And rangelands are one of the largest ecosystems for restoration. In actual fact, we are also saying that 2026 will be the year of rangelands. So internationally, the rangelands have come up. And the good thing is that we have the technology to restore whatever is destroyed. We have the types of grasses that we can produce seeds for restoration. In actual fact, Kenya, and maybe Africa as well, some of the best grasses in the world that are being used in Australia, in America, South America, they come from here.
Repeat that again, please.
The top grasses that are used for beef production in Brazil come from Kenya. It's called Bracharia. I think my colleague from KALRO can say more about it. It was developed here. Of course, they have developed it further so that naturally, the grasses we have are more resilient. They are able to use more of the soil nutrients than some of the grasses in the new world, as you may call it. So that's why they import them there. Another grass is what we call foxtail, or Cenchrus ciliaris. It's really a big, contributes a lot to the beef industry in Australia. And they come right from here. So in terms of what we can do, we can borrow from what's happening in Australia, in America, and wherever they have taken our grasses and improved them, so we can import them back. And actually, that's one of the projects of KALRO, trying to bring back bracharia grass.
That's very interesting that you say that, Prof, and also maybe to get an answer also from Dr. Smith as well. But you've just said something that was found here was taken out, and what we're doing now is encouraging the re-importation of the same thing. What's wrong? I guess maybe all three of you can contribute to this now. What is wrong with then? Because I'm assuming that when it was taken from here, not every inch of it was taken. So it still exists here, right?
Yeah.
What is wrong with using what is currently here and improving on it as opposed to re-importing a perfected version of the same?
Well, you don't have to rediscover the wheel. If they have discovered and improved on what we have, it would be good if we can import it and just move right on. But there are some challenges, there are patents, there are all this and that. In actual fact, to surprise you, the Boran cattle
Yes.
has come from those dry areas of northern Kenya.
Yes.
And it is actually patented in Australia as one of their breeds. It's very good, and there's nothing wrong about that. But they should give us something back, and I think they are giving us something back. We have a lot of rich biodiversity in the drylands, the rangelands. Not just that.
Okay.
There are many others.
So, Dr. Smith, what is the encouragement if we're looking at the international cooperation here? I'm going to assume it's cooperation. If we're looking at that and now this Congress that now comes here to Kenya, what are we saying? Are we looking at building up of partnerships, or are we looking then at saying, let's all work together for the preservation of this and probably the improvement of what is already there? Because just from what Professor Jesse has just said, it's like what we're saying now in this neck of the woods is to reinvite what was naturally known to some of these parts. So what are we looking at going forward from congresses like this, partnerships, working together onto such conclusions? What are we looking at here?
One of the most important things for this Congress and Congresses like this is partnerships, is collaboration. I was talking to the professor that trained me at the University of Georgia just recently, and he gave me 3 examples of people that he met at international grassland congresses that he developed linkages from that he was able to carry forward his research. And so even in the times that I've come to Kenya and helping plan this conference, I've learned a tremendous amount with how grasslands and rangelands are managed in Kenya. And particularly, there's a lot of advances in how to integrate livestock and wildlife together that has come out of the conservancies in Kenya and been able to go around the world. Professor Jesse was talking about grasses that the material has been taken to other countries and developed, and Kenya is using that back now. Other countries are continuing to, the long and the short, if we take improvements made in Kenya, if we take improvements made in Brazil, if we take improvements made in the U.S., if we all know about those, then we can integrate them in our own countries. If we continue to just work on our own by ourselves, then those improvements aren't made throughout.
Dr. Miano, just listening to, the work that KALRO does, and then the international cooperation that a Congress such as this one brings, it basically says that researchers such as yourselves are meeting with researchers from other countries and sharing ideas and sharing progress of what you're able to do. Are you able to secure some of your own research such that then it doesn't end up, being replicated elsewhere and being patented elsewhere? Is it an opportunity? Basically, what I'm asking is, are there risks of such congresses and such collaboration also leading to loss of our ideas and the research work that you've done?
I think, let me revisit one or two things that have been said before. We are bringing back home criteria from Brazil and other places. But that's not the only thing we are doing. Research takes time, and when you get something that's already improved, there's no reason why you should not bring it back and utilize it. But in KALRO, what we've done is taken a two-pronged approach. We will re-import what we can, what we perform, because
Dr. Miano, I'm afraid I think we have something wrong with your line. Let's try and get you on a clearer line as we continue this conversation. But Prof, maybe you can respond to this. Such conferences, I mean, we have people such as yourself. You've been at the university for so long. You have done a lot of research work. Risks of it just finding its way elsewhere?
Well, yes, there are risks, but we better look at the positive side of it, because this networking is a big capital. If you know who is working where and you collaborate, in actual fact, you add a lot of synergy. Competition is much less. Well, if you take, for example, that bracharia, the one that we are re-importing back to Kenya, one of the challenges I think KALRO is facing is producing the seeds so that you can share it with the farmers. Somehow, because of how it has been developed in Brazil, we are outside the latitude, and therefore bringing it here, we are finding it's not producing enough seeds, or we need to do something. So we are trying to re-import what came from here, and if we break that, and they can give us permission to work together like that, it's good for everybody. So there is much in collaboration, in partnership. There is less of these conflicts about who owns what. And in actual fact, under International Biodiversity Convention, if you get something, a certain variety or a plant or an animal from somewhere within what you call the wild place, you are supposed also to give something back to where that you got that variety. So we have been receiving a lot back. We are giving also. So this collaboration is good. In actual fact, one of the ladies who is a key speaker in this Congress is coming from Brazil. And she was willing to come here physically, face-to-face Congress. And her motivation, she told us, is to see where this grass has come from. You know.
Obviously, because it has benefited them in untold ways.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I think for us to benefit from the wealth, the biological capital that we have in those dry areas, one of the big challenge is the governance, the tenure system. Because if you are going to improve your piece of land, you have to actually feel you own it and you get the benefits. But if it's just common use, there's not a lot of investment. So we want to attract investment in these areas, and it is critical that we actually look at it, because I remember, if I'm not wrong, there was one of the presidents who visited here, and he said, do you have enough grass, enough hay to export to us because of the fattening animals that are being exported to the Middle East? And I attended another conference in Naivasha where we were interacting with the people from northern Somalia. And, you know, I was surprised that they're importing hay.
From Kenya?
No. From Spain and other countries.
And yet...
So, and we have so much land where we can invest properly and produce this. And already the dairy farmers in Githunguri, I think they have a relationship with the Maasais
Yeah.
to grow fodder for them because they don't have enough.
Yeah.
Those kind of partnership
Yeah.
is what we want to encourage.
Prof, you talked about governance. Well, there's a land tenure. Most of these areas that we're talking about, the arid and semi-arid lands, it's community land.
Yes,
So it's about community leadership.
yes,
But also it's about government.
yes.
And many of the things that I hear you say, I mean, we talk about this all the time on the show. KALRO and the good work that he does, university researchers and all the work that has been done. You stand anywhere in the world, Prof, and people stand up and they're like, yes, we know we have Professor Jesse from Kenya. He's actually coming. Locally, what makes it so difficult to implement some of these things? Because I think, from just listening, if simply because the land is actually communal, it would even be easier to manage it, as opposed to it being, owned by
Meaning
individuals.
small
pieces.
small scale holders, yes.
Well, I think we have made a lot of progress. With the devolution, we have now counties that are responsible for that type of intervention or uptake of that technology. But of course, they have many, many priorities now. Some of the agricultural priorities are not on their desk so much. There is also the problem of, I think there's one thing to discover something in the laboratory or your research. It's another thing to upscale it.
Yep.
The process of upscaling is not that easy. And we take it for granted.
And it requires often collaboration.
It requires a lot of investment.
Yes.
And as you say, you see, in Kenya, we have passed what we are calling Community Land Act, which now gives the county governments and the communities to define the jurisdiction of their area, so that if they want to improve that area, they have the legal framework to do it. And we have cooperative systems. Cooperative systems, they have worked for coffee, they have worked for other producers. Why can't
They're
we
working
have
for
cooperatives
dairies, yes.
in those areas to produce what we need in other areas? And we do it with the best technology. Because you can mechanize, we have the seeds. Do you know a kilo of that buffalo grass I'm talking about? It's about 400-500 shillings a kilo.
Grass.
Just seeds, yeah, because we want to do the restoration, to expand those areas that are degraded. We want to reclaim them.
Okay, then I have to ask Dr. Miano, Dr. Miano, why then does it seem that it is so difficult? I mean, just coming off of that question, we have again, the greatest minds are here. The land, clearly as a resource, is here. The basic minimum in terms of the grasslands, the rangelands, are available here. What would you say then is the missing link between the availability, the mines obviously that you have as a resource, and then the output, which is what we are looking for? What stops this then from being a thing whereby the end product is developed here and the end product is what is being sent out, as opposed to the input being sent out and then an end product being re-imported?
I think a number of things come into mind, and the first thing is we must look at collaboration and partnership positively. But as we look at partnership and collaboration, then we must have safeguards that then protect our natural resource and define how we share these resources with others. I think that is key, and it's something that we need to work on, and partnerships like we are having with the Congress now help us do that. Now, in terms of investments that we need to transform some of the areas that we are working on, a lot of these things are already happening. As Professor Njoka said, we are already into a system where the dry areas are producing products that then go into the production hub for dairy, for beef. And this is the system that we need to look at. What do we have advantage to produce in a certain area that is then required in another area? And that area does not only define the country, but also our neighboring countries and other regions that might need our product. As Professor Joka said, seed, grass seed has become one of the major products coming out of the dry areas. And I can assure you, we have seed being ordered from Makueni to Somalia to Sudan to other places in the country. So we are working on these issues. Yes, it takes time, but there are many things that are happening right now. Commercialization of our product has been a bit of a problem. But now, we are already working on some of the products, and that's where you can export seed to Somalia and other places.
Dr.
Just
Miano, allow me to just cut you short here. I'm hearing what you're saying, and much of what you're saying is what you would say on a daily basis. I mean, we have the potential for all these things. And then also, I'm sure 15 years ago, somebody would have said, well, there's progress that is being made. However, I'm not satisfied with the progress. Just listening to the example you've given with Makueni. So, Makueni, the government has set aside its own budget, its own resources to support the farmers. Have you had conversations with other governors and have they taken this up? The example you've given of Makueni farmers are now selling a hay to other farmers in other parts of the country, to other farmers in other parts of Africa. How about the other counties? Nanyuki, Laikipia County, Isiolo County, and the rest?
But in the different projects that we have, we are working with almost, apart from Nairobi and Mombasa, which are defined as non-agricultural counties, we are working with all the other counties, but with specific products that come from those counties. So it's not grasslands everywhere, because other counties might have other advantages.
Yeah.
I can tell you we are working very closely with the county of Kakamega on poultry. We are working with Narok and Kajiado and Taita Taveta on grasses.
Okay.
And the list can continue on and on and on. So there's a lot of work going on. Maybe one of the things we have not done very well is communicated all these activities and what is happening where.
Yeah.
It doesn't really mean nothing is happening. There's a lot happening. But I think communicating some of this information has been an issue.
And also scaling it.
And that's why I'm happy to be in this meeting this morning.
Because, you see, the thing is, Daktari, when people do not know of something as good as this, then it might as well not exist. And what makes it even worse is that because people don't know, and they don't know the great import that this particular discipline has on our livelihood and on our lives on a daily basis. I was talking to Professor Jesse here. There's even a dwindling interest in people taking up these courses in our universities. You actually find the department is getting to a point where it might even shut down. And yet this is at the heart of our very existence.
It's our future that depends on it.
That is true.
Yes.
That's true, and that's why I think KALRO now has an agreement with your station to broadcast these things. And that's why we are going into this agreement, because we know there's a lot that people need to know and need to understand why it's happening and how they can link into this.
Indeed. And we thank you very much, Dr. Miano, for even sharing the information that you're sharing here with us today. Dr. David Miano is a researcher with the Kenya Agriculture Livestock Research Organization in the Non-Ruminant Research Center. Dr. Ray Smith is the president of the International Grassland Society and also the president of the Joint International Grassland and Rangeland Congress 2021. Professor Jesse Njoka is associate professor in range management from the University of Nairobi. Thank you very much for joining us. And just give us the date, Prof, as we conclude, the date for this Congress.
Yes, this Congress is taking place from 25th of October to 29th of October. And it is completely virtual.
Okay.
Although the president of the Congress is coming, he's coming here to physically make us work together.
Right.
And there is a lot in the Congress. We
can
have
be
7 sub-themes. We have a theme on rangeland ecology and management.
We'll have more on these conversations going forward, Prof, as we continue to wait for the Congress to happen. Asanteni sana for joining us.